welcome to CLEF Notes. This morning we are continuing our series on the Christian faith by looking at the Ten Commandments before we dive into each individual one. We're looking at them in their totality and how we are to understand them. Now, you might have questions about the numbering of the Ten Commandments. If you do have questions about that, having looked in your catechism, for example, and then gone to the Bible bookstore to try to find a plaque of those Ten Commandments and found a different enumeration, you can go to CLEF Notes number 9. There's a whole discussion of it there, and I explain there why that is the way it is. So, the Ten Commandments, they're found in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5, and they're summarized by Jesus for us in Matthew chapter 22 when he's asked, what is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. And then he said a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now, if we take a look at the Ten Commandments, we see that the first 3, they have to do with God. And the remaining 7 have to do with our neighbor. So, there you have a nice summary from Jesus saying we need to love the Lord our God with all our heart and soul and mind, and we need to love our neighbor as ourselves. That summarizes all 10 commandments for us. So when we look at the 10 commandments individually, you shall have no other gods, you shouldn't misuse the name of the Lord your God, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Then we jump into the commandments dealing with our neighbor. Honor your father and your mother. Shall not murder, commit adultery, shall not steal, bear false witness, or covet. So, when we look at the 10 commandments, we look at our existence in the world. Who is God, and how should we understand God to be, and our relationship to God? Who is our neighbor? That's the basics, really, of how we live in this world. So, theologically we say there's a first table and a second table of law, meaning the first table is the first 3 commandments having to do with God, second table having to do with our neighbor. We get that right? Wonderful. So next time on this series, we're going to dive right into that first commandment and ask that question, why is it so important? Because, Luther points out, if you can keep the first commandment, you can keep them all. How is that? Well, we'll have to see next time on CLEF Notes.